Well, recently my wife sent me a TED Talk that had nothing to do with sex, but I immediately turned it into something to do with sex, which actually didn't surprise her because I think she thinks that I talk about it and think about sex all the time. So again, not a big surprise for her. But today, I want to share with you the concepts that I learned in that TED Talk. And I think you too, if you are a regular listener on this podcast, will probably immediately make the same connection that I did. So today on episode 199 of Finding Traction, we ask the question, do you have a spank bank? Welcome aboard.
Guys ready?
When it comes to porn, are you stuck, spinning out, or slipping backwards in your life? If so, then welcome to the Finding Traction podcast, a show dedicated to those who are looking to gain recovery momentum away from porn and toward the life and relationships they have always hoped for. Now, here's your host, Vern Tomke.
Well, let me say that we are now heading into the spring of 2026, and we have a new group of guys. There's, I think, 3 guys waiting to start a group. So if you're looking just for a regular group of guys that want to find other committed guys to walk towards their first full year of freedom from porn, I encourage you to reach out to me. Our Finding Traction groups are 52 weeks. They're based on a video series that I've created that we go through. All the materials are included with the course. And if you want information about that, or you just want to get access to a lot of free resources like worksheets based on this podcast and other things, I encourage you to sign up for the free Circle Learning platform. You will see the instructions in your show notes, as well as you will see a link to the TED Talk. It's like an 8 to 10 minute TED Talk that I'm going to reference today. So if any of that interests you, encourage you to check that out. Or if you just want to get a hold of me and talk a bit more about your recovery, no strings attached, please reach out to me for that or any other reason. My email is bandofbrothers.care@gmail.com. Okay, so let's get back to this TED Talk. Again, the link is in your notes there. And on the TED Talk, the speaker asked his audience to do a simple exercise that I'm going to repeat with you. So what I want you to do is I want you to close your eyes for a second, unless of course you're driving, but close your eyes if you can, and visualize the following, if you will. A rocket ship crash lands on an alien planet. A creature comes up to the hatch and knocks, and someone opens it from within. All right. So pretty simple, right? So what did you see? Here are some simple questions that I want to ask you. What color was the planet? What kind of creature was it? What did it look like? Who opened the hatch? Now, here is the absolutely wild thing. There is a huge difference among people in what they see or don't see. Some people, when asked those questions, see absolutely nothing. They simply just record the concepts of the story, spaceship, planet, creature, hatch, person, but they don't see anything. And if you saw nothing, as I shared that short exercise, you have a condition called aphantasia, where you see nothing. You don't have access to what we refer to as your mind's eye. And that actually describes about 2 to 4% of the population. Now, on the other end of the spectrum is something called hyperphantasia, where you can visualize in exquisite detail, sometimes even able to superimpose what you are imagining on reality. And that represents about 3 to 6% of people. Now, everyone else is somewhere in between. In other words, once again, there's a huge difference among people. So let me ask you, if 1 is aphantasia, you see nothing, and 5 is hyperphantasia, exquisite detail, what number would you give to yourself? What level of detail or color did you see or not see? Now, let me ask you a second question. Do you see how this relates to porn? Well, by now, most of you, I think, are going along, and some of you are going, boy, this sounds completely relevant, especially when it comes to the subject of fantasy. Now, recently, I became aware of a term. I don't know why I never heard this term before. It's still actually a pretty common term, apparently, but I don't know where I was, considering I talk about this all the time. And the term is spank bank. And the spank bank is slang for a mental collection of sexual fantasies, memories, or images that a person stores to recall later for masturbation. It was popularized in the late 1990s or early 2000s, and it refers to personal, private, and often a subconscious repository used for sexual arousal. It's like a saving of mental erotic content for future use. Again, it acts as a sanctuary. It could be scenes from movies or past sexual encounters or videos or images you've seen. And again, some of you are going, wow, okay, I now see where some of this TED Talk is coming in. And how you navigate this is going to vary wildly depending on where you were on that spectrum I described, 1 to 5. So let's say you are on the higher end of the spectrum. You have the ability to see things, remember things in vivid detail. You can easily go back to those vaults and access those images, videos, etc. at a later date. Well, what's going to be especially challenging for you? It's going to be fantasy, right? Because you can have and you can easily retrieve all of those memories and images. I mean, I've had people tell me, I don't really need porn at all, Vern. I have everything right there in my head. Maybe you're someone like that. Maybe you're someone who is mostly like that. For guys like this, it also affects how they dream. They usually dream in more vivid detail. And it's more powerful, their dreams in that way. So people who are high on the spectrum, it's not all bad news. They also have advantages, for example, in certain memory strategies. I don't know if you've heard about some of these strategies where take certain things you're trying to remember and you simply go to different rooms in your head or drawers and you put what you want to remember. This memory or this information goes in that drawer and this goes in that drawer. And if you're high on this scale, you can use memory to you can use these visual images to augment your memory. Now, on the negative side, when you relapse, the ripples are strong and pronounced, and they stay in your head longer. Right? It's easy for you to go back there. And whenever you renew them, it's like they become real all over again. So, if you are high on that scale, if you are going to be successful in your recovery, you are going to need specific strategies to deal with your highly visualized brain. All of those encounters, porn images, videos, etc., etc. Now, not everybody is high on that scale. Fun fact, I am actually low on that scale. I would put myself at maybe a 1.5 or a 2. I can't really easily access my mind's eye. For example, when I read a book or a novel, I'm not picturing what's going on in the novel. I'm simply, the concepts are there, but I'm not picturing it as I'm reading it. It also means that I often lose things. And when people say, well, when did you have it or where did you have it last? I hate that question because I can't visualize where I had it last. I'm horrible with those spatial rotation exercises, the things that you rotate things in your mind. It would probably, not make me a very good architect or engineer. Maybe that's even the reason why I don't enjoy, much to my kids' horror, all of their fantasy shows that they love, right? And when I dream, I don't dream in vivid imagery. I dream about strategies or ways of accessing porn. They're more conceptual ideas. Well, some of you are thinking, boy, you must be nice to be like you. Well, just clarify, for myself and other people like me, just because I'm low on that doesn't mean that there's not still a struggle. My struggle is often around creating safe external environments. I often find that people who are low on the spectrum struggle with the need for more novelty. And also because their mind can't hold images, they're always trying through their actions to refresh. It's like refreshing a mental web page because the images don't remain vivid and as for long. So guys are often struggle with continually drawn back to acting out with technology to refresh or renew those images, which again leads to more of a need for novelty or continually going back to the same well. So it's not that we don't struggle, it's just that we don't struggle in the same way. But what if you're not like me? And I showed this video, like I say, it's a short little video to almost all of my groups. And I had the guys, peg where they were on that scale. And a lot of the guys were a 4 or a 5. They're saying, Vern, I can recall things in vivid, rich detail. Fantasy has always been a tantalizing option for me to access. Well, how do you navigate recovery then? I want to talk a little bit about that for people like you, because again, probably over 50% of the people that are in my groups are people like that. And and let me also say this. I have talked to a number of different therapists to say, how do you help guys? And how do people like that? And because I have some therapists in my groups as well, it's been fun to get their suggestions. Here's the first thing that is important, is crucial to say. If you are high on the scale, the goal cannot be to turn off your brain imagery. That will not work. You think, operate, and learn. Remember visual learners type of stuff? You are a visual learner, and that won't change. And any efforts to try to be a less visual person will prove to be unsuccessful. The goal of this exercises, and some of these exercises I'm going to give you, is to learn to reframe the imagery, to change the channel to a different palette of images. That's where we're heading, not to stop the images or stop all images in your head. So let me give you, first of all, let's just take the area of some sort of mental strategies. And again, I would encourage you, a lot of my guys are in therapy. Talk to your therapist about some of these things, and they probably can help you navigate these and even apply these in a more skilled way. I'm not a trained therapist, right? So I just want to clarify that. But these are some of the things that I've heard in my research have proven to be effective. The first one has the whole thing of image replacement. This is like fantasy interruptus. And what you're doing there is you are changing the channel. You are immediately replacing one set of fantasies or images with a pre-chosen neutral or regulating scene in your mind. And you learn to practice that in non-stressful moments or when you're not aroused, so you can easily do it. So when you are faced with a pressing or reoccurring or especially strong imagery or fantasy that wants to arouse you, you have learned to be able to change the channel in that way. I recently saw a TV show, and the fellow thought he was having a heart attack, and the doctor said, actually, it's not a heart attack. It's actually a panic attack is what you're having. And he helped the guy actually change and go to a different place in his mind to access instead of this whole panic attack that he was having. So this whole idea is how, first of all, the mental strategy is how do I interrupt this whole imagery or this whole movie that starts playing in my mind? Let me give you a little example. Let's say you're sitting in a movie theater. You are there. You've been excited about this movie, even saying it's a fantasy movie. So you've gone to see this amazing fantasy movie, and you're there, and you're just getting into the movie, and there's somebody behind you who's talking really loudly to their friend, and it's really irritating. And then the person in front of you pulls out their phone and starts talking on it or watching a video. And all of a sudden, what's happened? You wanted to get into this movie that you've been looking forward to. And now these idiots behind you and in front of you are pulling you out of that and bringing you back to reality. Now that's an annoying situation, but that's the whole idea of what we're talking here. We are having our attention shifted deliberately. We're not fighting the image, but we're not feeding it. We're deliberately going to a different image. All right, so you're changing the channel. One of the things that I often do to change that, and again, even when I have a thought, I'm lying in bed or something, I will go to a different image. I try this. I don't do great at it, but I used to have a creek that I would go fishing at. And I would go there and I'd go from hole to hole, and I just try to see myself at that creek where it was a great place. So change the channel, interrupt it by having a place that you've regularly able to go and you've practiced going to that place. Okay, change the channel, interrupt it, number one. Number two, de-glamorize it. There's another technique. And that may be where, and I don't know how you do this, but for some of you go, oh, you just do it this way. You turn the image black and white. You shrink it to a postage stamp size. Put it behind frosted glass. Maybe you add some sort of absurd element. You change the girl in your thing to your mother-in-law. Oh my goodness. Or you slow it down, right? And what you're doing is you're reducing the emotional impact of it without suppressing it. So there is another mental strategy. Here's another one that therapists teach their patients, the container exercise. And that's where you take that arousing thought or that arousing image or video and you in your mind and you put it into an imaginary container. It could be a box, a jar, a suitcase, a vault. Visualize locking it there, sealing it temporarily to create space and distance in the present moment. Kind of like what I've talked to you guys about taking all my remotes and locking them away in the box. I can't do this visually, but I do it physically. Get the idea? And the last couple ones, safe place visualization. And this was similar to the guy who thought he was having a heart attack, Picture a place where you feel completely safe. And, you notice the colors, the sound, the textures and sensations. And you've learned to go to that special, safe place. All right? Or perhaps a safe person exercise. For those of you who are Christians, imagine Jesus with you, or imagine what Jesus would say to you in that moment, right? So a safe person exercise. And the last one these are all mental exercises. There's an advanced skill where you just practice mindfulness. You step back from the movie and you go, I'm watching a movie. Where is it located? What color is it? How intense is it? And what you are is you learn to step back out of, again, these are all techniques that can be taught. You step out of a image, you step out of a movie, and you observe it without entering into it. Right? So all of those are examples of strategies that you could learn, and they might not all work for you, but you might find one or two of them especially helpful when you are in a vulnerable place. Now, again, therapists also use, something, body-based exercises as a whole system of therapy. And again, you therapists out there are rolling your eyes going, Vern, a little learning is a dangerous thing, and it's absolutely true. Talk to your specialist. But there's a whole version of somatic therapy, which means body. And you're focusing on your body. It can include breathing, but it's a much broader system. For example, there's one type of help called the whole body scan. And I love this idea because one of the phrases we've used to describe fantasy is this idea of floating. I'm in, the real world, and all of a sudden my mind begins to float. I love the imagery around the losing traction with the tires, right? But we're now floating. Our mind is like a helium, a balloon filled with helium, and it starts to float. And we're instead going, no. I need to take my floating mind and I need to root it back in reality, anchor it. And one of the ways of doing that is by anchoring it in your body. You sit down, for example, you lie down, or you focus on your breathing. You bring attention to one body part. You notice the sensations in that body part. And you essentially move through your body, your feet, legs, hips, stomach, chest, back, shoulders, arms, hands, neck, face, head. And if your mind starts to wander, you bring it back to that physical body. Again, the whole idea here is awareness. It's one version of changing the channel, but you're anchoring it in the here and the now. And the last one is exercises that therapists use, especially when they are dealing with some version of trauma, where what happens is trauma almost gets stuck. We get stuck in a trauma response. Our chest becomes tight, or we feel frozen, or we have a sudden fight or flight reaction, or a certain situation triggers a, fight, flight, freeze, fawn type of reaction. And there's a number of things. For example, you might have heard of the technique called EMDR. And it's to help people when they're experiencing trauma-like responses, when they get into situations that remind them of past trauma. And that, I think, also that system could be helpful for people. Again, I'm just throwing that out. I want to recognize that we're all different on that 1 to 5 scale. And if you are one of those 4, at the 4 or 5 level where you see the world in hyper visual detail, you remember things in hyper visual detail, you have ready access to your mind's eye, you can go there at any time, then you need to find some strategies that can be helpful for you in that moment of wanting to float, wanting to go back to your favorite memories, your favorite porn images or porn videos. And you learn that, and you learn to do that when it's like anything. You learn to do that when you're not aroused or you're not tempted, so that you can call on that when you are. Of course, this is not taking away from the idea, and we teach our guys in our groups to make phone calls or to put it on the WhatsApp group that they're struggling today and to reach out and connect. But if it's 11:30 at night and you're trying to get to sleep, or it's 3 a.m, or you're in a situation where you can't physically reach out to somebody, some of these strategies could be a real lifesaver. So I hope that helps. Love to get feedback. You therapists can write me and say, Vern, you really need to go to school. And I would probably agree with you. But hopefully I've given you just enough information that you can go and work with people to really help you get good at some of these strategies. We'll see you next time for episode 200 of Finding Traction. Take care.